What's happening, everybody, and welcome back to the Funky Brain Podcast. My name is Dennis, and this is my Funky Brain. I hope everybody's doing okay, and we're just going to have a fun chat today. My guest today, she's a very well-known, accomplished actress with well over 100 TV and movie credits spanning well over 3 decades, which means she started when she was like 2, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. And she's most well-known as Susan Ivanova in the hit series Babylon 5, and today she uses her celebrity status as an author, a keynote speaker, and an advocate for alcohol abuse and addiction recovery. Ms. Claudia Christian, how are you doing today?
I am wonderful. Thank you, my dear.
So can you share with us what led you to where you are today?
I think I'm very blessed in the sense that the majority of my working life, I didn't have a problem with substances. So I was able to really have a great base career to then extend into the rest of my life. So my addiction really didn't creep in until my late 30s. And I had been working since I was a child. So I had all of these years of fun use of alcohol and maybe light use of alcohol and maybe a little dabbling in drugs, but luckily never got addicted to anything until later in life, which is when alcohol became my poison. I basically did what everybody normally would run to: rehab, AA, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy. If you live in LA, you try everything. I really did try everything. And unfortunately, I was in a cycle of alcohol deprivation, which caused cravings. And I was not a happy, sober person because it was an enforced sobriety without eliminating the biological aspect of my compulsive cravings. So I was basically white knuckling all the time, and I was just miserable in my forced sobriety. It wasn't until 2009 when I had the granddaddy relapse of them all, and I had to get a medical detox, that I discovered naltrexone, which nobody had told me about in any of my rehab stay or in any meeting or any psychotherapy, or no one had ever mentioned this drug, naltrexone, which supposedly helped with cravings. So I looked into it myself, and I found out that there was an option that used targeted use of naltrexone, which were for people who wanted to get rid of the compulsive thought process in their head, but also continue to drink. At this point, I was still young enough to think, I can't envision 50 years of sobriety. At that point, I was just like, I'm going to live another 50 years at least, and I can't promise I'm never going to drink again. So I took the naltrexone in a targeted fashion, meaning 1 hour prior to the first drink of the day. That's known as pharmacological extinction, or the Sinclair Method, named after Dr. John David Sinclair, who was the American researcher who developed this way of using an opiate antagonist in a targeted manner. So the point was sort of Pavlov in reverse, that you would actually take this medication to decrease or stop a behavior. So that would include gambling, but in my case, it was drinking. So I went on TSM, the Sinclair Method. In 2009, I saw an immediate reduction in my drinking. I saw an immediate reduction in the compulsive thinking about alcohol. And within 3 or 4 months, I was literally like meh when it came to booze. And I would plan my drinking sessions. So I would just say, okay, I'm going to be with so-and-so and they drink, and we're going to a restaurant where I have an association of food and wine. So I probably will have a glass of wine, and then I would take my pill, and then I would wait the hour, and then I would drink mindfully or slowly, which was something that I didn't know about back then, but I was doing naturally because that's just what naltrexone did to my body. I didn't want to guzzle anymore because I wasn't getting the reinforcement from the alcohol. I wasn't getting the endorphin reward from the alcohol. But what I was getting was its relaxation effects and the good taste of red wine with a meal. So over the course of the next near decade, I stayed on TSM. And then about 2 years ago, I just said, I don't really see the point anymore of drinking. It just didn't appeal to me anymore. I was really into, getting my body in shape and that extra calories, and also sleep, to be honest. I know you're a dude and you probably don't want to hear this, but when a woman goes through menopause or perimenopause, your hormones are all over the place. And I was, I think, 53, because I'm 55 now. And I just said, you know what? It's just not bringing a lot to my life. My sleep isn't great. If I drink and take naltrexone, so it was just kind of a choice. Now, that said, if at any point in my life I found myself in Italy and I wanted to have a glass of wine, I could, if I took the medication and waited an hour. It's just, for me, and for the past 2 years, I've been like, I don't see the point. So I call that a natural sort of path to a chosen sobriety or abstinence, with an open-ending life in front of me, that all I know is that if I do drink, I will have to comply with the method, which means taking a medication. I'm not ever cured. And I want people to be really straight about that. There is no, even though the book that I based my, that saved my life was called The Cure for Alcoholism, doing the Sinclair Method puts you into remission. And then what it is the addiction is sitting in the back of your brain, just sort of dead. I always equate it to like a little dragon that's lost all its juice. And it's just like 2 cells that are sitting in the back of your brain. But if you drink without naltrexone, that sucker's going to come back. It is going to grow, and it's going to grow exponentially quickly. And it's going to suddenly be that dragon again, and it's going to control your life again. So you really have to remember that. So people who have been on TSM for, let's say, a couple of years, and now they only drink twice a year, doesn't matter. Even during those 2 times a year, you still have to take the medication and wait the hour. So that's been my journey in recovery. It's basically been through everything at it. Nothing worked for me until I found TSM, and TSM worked for me. And so now I have devoted my life to helping others find out about this very inexpensive, very effective treatment with a nearly 80% long-term success rate that one can do in the privacy of one's home. You can use telemedicine. You can use your own doctor. You can go to an in-office doctor. You don't have to go away for 30 to 90 days. You don't have to pay hundreds and thousands of dollars. You don't have to mortgage your home. You don't have to stand up every day and say, I'm an alcoholic. You don't have to do a lot of things that turn off people when they are seeking recovery. This statistic, 90% of people do not seek treatment because they think that abstinence is the only choice that they have. So only 10% of people, you have 100 people, 90% of them aren't going to seek treatment. 10% are. And of that 10%, only 10% will actually receive treatment. That's the crazy thing. So you still have people going to their doctor and saying, look, I've tried 12-step programs. I've tried rehab. It's not working for me. Maybe I'm not religious. Maybe I'm not, whatever the reason is. Don't you have a medication? And doctors will say, no, just stop drinking. And it's crazy because right now there are a good 6 or 7 medications used to treat alcohol use disorder. And nobody's being offered them except for the antiquated antabuse, which does nothing to undo addiction. What antabuse does is it's punitive. If you drink on it, you get sick. So guess what people do? They don't take it. They just don't take it. Well, wouldn't you rather take a medication that actually undoes addiction in the brain? That's always been my thing. But then again, I believe in science.
I have a way more open mind than I used to. I've been sober a really long time. And the way I was like trained was in AA, and I don't really go much anymore because I think it kind of stops. There's only so much growth you can get there. And I think you end up relying on AA instead of learning how to grow yourself.
Sure.
And I'm like, I love hearing different options that are out there. And I think a lot of people do. And I love your point. Out of those 100 people, only one is actually going to go out and get treatment.
Yeah. And in addition to that, by the way, I'm not in any way, shape, or form dissing anybody's approach, including 12-step, because here's my attitude. The only thing you need to attend an AA meeting is the desire to quit drinking. Well, about 40% of people on TSM do want to become sober eventually. So why wouldn't they be able to take the medication and drink mindfully and still attend AA meetings? There's no reason why. If your end goal is abstinence, there's no reason why you cannot take a medication that includes drinking to get you to that goal of abstinence. Sure. And I don't think we should be closed-minded about any of this. I don't care how you get better, just get better.
Well, and I also like to talk about, and I think it's important too, is the emotional aspect. We need to continue to grow and continue to become better people to deal with the real issues. Like, a lot of the reason that most people drink is the insecurities, the fear. I don't know how to cope. I don't know how to feel. So drinking helped me with that.
It's especially dangerous when you have somebody, and I'm sure you found people like this yourself, where the first drink they ever take as a 13 or 14-year-old suddenly they say, oh my God, I finally felt like I was in my own skin. That's a really difficult thing to then, as an adult, if you're still coping with social anxiety and social issues with other humans by numbing yourself with a substance like alcohol, you then, you're really stuck emotionally in that 13-year-old, 14-year-old stage. You haven't grown, and because you've been stifling down everything with this substance, alcohol. And the fact is, you aren't yourself when you're on a substance. And we all know that in hindsight. Anybody in recovery with any long-term sort of processing of their own issues can look back and say, oh, wow, I wasn't any more entertaining or fun or beautiful on alcohol. I was actually probably a bore. I was a bit of loud or obnoxious or anything.
Annoying.
And I'm annoying, yeah, and repetitive. And I'm fine now. It's probably sloppy, but people have these fears. They have fears of having sex sober. They have fears of just being at a party sober, fears of talking to their parents without booze in them. And believe me, I went through all of that as well. Most of us did. And it's just when you come out of it and you can be in your own skin that you realize that you're enough and that you're fine, and you don't need that gauze of a substance to take away your sparkle, your joy, and which is really what it does.
That was such a great point. I love how you put that. The problem is, for me, you said 13, 14 years old. For me, I was 15, so it was right on track. And then this is why most people fail in sobriety, is because now, all right, when I stopped, I was 31 years old. And now I have the brain of a 15-year-old. And that was 17 years ago. And it took me years to try to catch up. And it's hard growing up. It's painful growing up in your 30s and 40s and beyond. What happens is a lot of people will say, all right, I'm going to stop drinking. And then they just sit there and hold on to the white knuckling. And then the next day, life kicks you in the balls, because that's what life does, or kicks you wherever you would get kicked. And you're like, well, screw this. I'm going to start drinking. I don't know how to handle this. This is hard. Drinking's easy.
Yeah, it's also the feelings that come along with that. If you're drinking before your brain is fully formed, which usually occurs in your early 20s. So if you're drinking as an adolescent, then all of those feelings that come up for you, for instance, as a 31-year-old, suddenly you're feeling the pain of rejection. You're feeling the pain, and you didn't have those 17 years or whatever to grow the hell up and find that when something triggered you, you handle it like an adult, like saying no, or you know what, you hurt my feelings, or you know what, I don't want to be your friend anymore because you suck. You're really mean, and you're not the kind of person that I want reflected upon me. But instead, you were 15 at 31, now dealing with all that life throws at you. And of course, that's going to be difficult and overwhelming, and the temptation to just shut it up and shut these negative self-talk in your heads. With booze, it's so much easier. You're right. It's so much easier. But once again, it robs you of so much. Anything that you misuse, whether it's food or alcohol or drugs, anything you misuse does steal your sparkle. It steals your life force. It steals your relationships and your ability to be present in life. So a lot of us will rely on these substances. And what we don't realize is, yes, it's making us incapable of actually having normal, healthy adult relationships and making normal, healthy adult choices in our life. And that is what I think a lot of 12-step communities refer to as the work. But what they don't understand, or what they won't consider, is that work is being done with every method, hopefully, of treating alcohol use disorder. And that includes medications. I don't tell somebody to pop a pill and hope for the best. And, now that we know what we know and how much, peer support and therapy helps with individuals to deal with childhood trauma and to deal with the normal stresses of life, you have to give somebody a toolbox. You can't just give them a medication and say, okay, this will take care of your cravings. And, and in the beginning, believe me, and I'll admit it, that's all I did, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I was supposed to keep a drink log and be mindful and drink, slowly and not drink because I had a bad day, to process my feelings and all that. And I didn't know any of that talk because I didn't, nobody taught me. So now that I've learned how much more effective it is with the whole enchilada, then yes, I can deal with it much better with individuals who are just starting out.
Yeah, and what I heard, what you were just saying right there, is like you're using it as a supplement for living, not a substitute for living, right? So that's a big difference. Instead of just taking the pill, instead of just going to an AA meeting, instead of all this stuff, you're using it as a supplement to become better.
It really addresses the biological aspects of addiction. That's the great thing is, so you're not white knuckling through your therapy meeting. You're actually focusing on the therapist. So you're not white knuckling through your AA meeting. You're actually listening to the people in the meeting. You're not thinking about drinking. So you're not white knuckling while you're doing anything. Alcohol is no longer here in the front of your brain. It's way back here. And maybe around 5 o'clock, you'll have a memory of, oh yeah, it's 5 o'clock. Normally I drink at this time. But hopefully with the medication, you can say, you know what? I could have a drink, but I really want to go for a run in the morning. And it's going to make me feel better if I'm clear-headed. So you have a choice. Well, that's called mindfulness. You have to think it through. It's the same thing as when you're trying to deal with cravings in real life. We all know, with or without medication, or with or without, people have cravings. But if you can't identify if that craving is a memory or a trigger or a real physical craving for a substance, then you're in trouble. Because then everything you do is going to result in you grabbing for a substance. Oh, I'm depressed, I'll have some chocolate. Oh, I had a bad day, I'm gonna have a drink. Oh, you know what, if my mom yelled at me, so I'm gonna use. Well, no. Once you get to a point in your recovery where your mom yells at you, you can say, okay, I'm gonna tell her what she said to me upset me. And I'm gonna speak very calmly, and I'm gonna try and resolve it that way. And if she continues to yell at me, I'm gonna go for a walk. And maybe suggest that she do the same.
Right. That's awesome stuff. That's growth. I wanted to talk about real quick was something you said, and I like to address this, is that you said a couple times, taking care of your body, going for a run. Our diet and our fitness is so important. A lot of people, and this is a huge disagreement I have with a lot of AA and some other people, that they say this, oh, I'm going to quit drinking, but keep smoking and keep eating like crap. And I think that's a huge mistake, because the idea, we need to keep our minds sharp in order to overcome the cravings, in order to find new ways to grow up and deal with our mom when she pisses us off, or to do this or to do that. And eating that crap and smoking doesn't keep our mind sharp.
No, also just for the feeling of self-confidence and self-love, to get this vessel, you have one vessel in life. This is it, your body. And to get that in the best possible shape so that it's functioning so well, like a good, fine machine. I see people who treat their cars better than their bodies.
That's right. That's a great analogy.
They get the oil checked and their tires checked, and they sit there on the weekends and polish the damn car. And I'm like, what are you doing for this car? What are you doing for this machine? Get out there and take a walk and be in nature and stimulate yourself, because you're not going to have energy unless you give energy. And if you have a physical handicap where you're not terribly active, you can find some way to at least be stimulated by nature, or maybe you can find a place to swim instead of walk. I can't run, for instance. My hips are buggered from years and years of skiing and stuff. Yeah, you would know. Yeah. But I walk and I do Pilates. You can find something, or stretch, or just breathing exercises. I mean, people don't understand box breathing is so wonderful. Just to breathe in 4 beats, hold it 4 beats, breathe out 4 beats. I mean, that just makes you come down and be present and fill yourself with oxygen. There's something you can do. There's no excuses. And if you can't do exercise, you can eat clean. Drink enough water every day. Don't drink sodas. Don't go to fast food. I took on a challenge with somebody who said, well, I go for the frozen meals and everything because it's just faster and easier. So I actually sat down with her in her house. I brought over my own groceries, and I had, she was heating up her frozen stuff. I said, we're going to do a cook-off. You make your preservative-laden junk food, and I'm going to cook a meal in the exact same time that you defrost. And I did. And I made like 3 instant, fabulous, healthy meals. And she was like, oh, okay. So until you actually show somebody that it's possible, they don't grasp that extra 8 minutes of your life that you spend making something healthy to eat makes such a difference.
It makes such a difference. And it's therapeutic too.
Totally. When you create food, you're creating color and vibrancy and creativity. And when you take on a new recipe, even if you bake for a loved one, or you try something new, it stimulates endorphins and dopamine. Your body makes opiates naturally. We need to stimulate that. I tell people when they're detoxing off alcohol, I know this is going to really be difficult, but go outside and get your heart rate up, because getting that heart rate up is going to create that serotonin that your body needs. It's going to reduce your cortisol levels, which is producing anxiety, and you're just going to feel better as you slowly detox off of the alcohol. And it's just such the human body is amazing. And if we just honor it and treat it well, it will give us everything we need. It'll regulate our sleep. All these people are saying, well, I have to drink alcohol so I can fall asleep. No, you've developed a tolerance and you've screwed up your circadian rhythms. And that's why you can't sleep, is because alcohol has changed your brain. Yeah. And it's wrong. It's changed it into the thing that you don't want it to be. You need to eliminate that and get your natural rhythm back, and you will get your sleep back. Did you have a problem sleeping as a kid? No. It's because all of these years of you're dealing with anxiety and the sugar that you're eating all day and the caffeine that you're drinking all day, and then drinking alcohol, and then you screwed everything up. Let's clean everything out and go back to what you were born with. It will probably work. As a last resort, we go to medications. As a last resort, let's see what you have naturally first.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that all that stuff is learned behavior. And, we have our subconscious mind, is running the show. It's driving our bus. Our conscious mind is like, I want to quit drinking. I want to eat better. I want to go for a run. I want to do this. I want to do that. And my subconscious mind says, let's go have some wine. And then I listen to the subconscious mind. So in order to reverse that, and that's learned behavior, in some cases, 30 years, 40 years. So in order to reverse that, I need to change over time, every day, these patterns, and then I develop a healthy lifestyle.
Alcoholism is a learned behavior. And what Dr. Sinclair always said was the human body can unlearn things, much like Pavlov proved with the dog salivating every time the bell rang. And what naltrexone does, every time you drink on it, your brain is unlearning the behavior of drinking. It's unlearning it. So eventually it will be a meh situation, like, oh, I can take it or leave it situation. That's when you've actually unlearned the behavior of compulsive drinking. Yeah. And it's fascinating that an opiate antagonist can help that process so much quicker. I mean, I work with people who reach extinction within a few months, and it's quite amazing. I don't want to give anybody out there the wrong impression, though. The average person takes about 9 months to unlearn this issue, because you have to understand, you don't become an alcoholic the first time you take a drink, although some people do, but that's a rare percentage of people who are spontaneous alcoholics. But the majority of people, you go to bars, you go to pubs, you walk down the grocery aisle, you see the wine. All of this is sparking endorphins. And you're learning the behavior to crave, to want, and to also use it to alleviate stress, to alleviate anxiety, to alleviate pain, to stomp down your emotions when you go through trauma. It's an interesting thing. It's like recently when my dad passed in April, I had to think to myself, if it was 10 years ago, I probably would have stayed drunk for a month. And I really had to sit down and kind of honor that feeling and say, wow, you've come a long way. Even with everything else that, we have so much negative self-talk in our lives. And I do it all the time. I mean, I'm an actress too. So all I'm told all day long is no, I'm a middle-aged white actress too. So that's even worse. But I noticed that I just said, you know what, Claudia, you've come a long way, because the thought of drinking never occurred to me. What occurred to me was having that time with my dad before he passed and trying to make his last days as precious as possible and as good, and cooking the best food I could for him and being with him, just being there in case he needed anything. And I wouldn't have been able to be that person when I was in my disease, I would have been drinking through the whole thing. I would have been drinking up until holding his hand when he passed. I would have been drunk when he died. And I know I would have been, because that was my go-to mechanism to deal with anything uncomfortable. Have a drink. I'm uncomfortable. Have a drink. I had a bad day. Have a drink. I had a bad date. Have a drink. Get drunk during the date. That was just the go-to mechanism for life. And It's not anymore. And actually, you know what? Pain is okay. Grief is okay. It's okay. It washes through you and it makes you grow as a human being. And you realize how beautiful life and death, everything is. You can honor it in such a better way when you're clear. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to scream. I get angry and feelings of guilt come up. Everything comes up, but it comes up and then it goes away. That's the difference. If you stifle it down with a substance, it'll never go away. You're just putting the cork back in the bottle. Literally putting the cork in the bottle, and it's going to stifle. You're going to get stomach cancer. You're going to get sick because you're just holding everything in.
I was going to bring up the grief and all the loss and the stuff that you've been going through and how you didn't have to drink through any of it. And I want to share. So I'm about 5 months into a separation of an 8-year relationship. Really painful. Like, I don't remember getting sober because it's physically, I don't remember the pain because it's been so long. But I know it was painful, but this was really awful. We don't want to have to go through these types of feelings very often. However, the reason I bring it up is because of something you just said. My sister, I went to her one day, and this was like the first couple of weeks were like the bleeding heartache, crying every 5 minutes. It was really awful. I said to her, I'm really sad. And you know what she said? She said, it's okay to be sad.
Yeah, it's okay to be sad. You wouldn't be normal if you weren't sad.
That's right. And it's okay to feel angry sometimes. And it's okay to be happy. And it's okay to want to cry. And it's okay to want to scream. And it's okay. And I didn't know it was okay. Like, I had to cover those up because I didn't know it was okay to like feel like that. Or I had to be a certain way, act a certain way, look a certain way. And now I could just feel.
Well, also you're a man, and that's difficult because boys are still taught, even now, even in these different era, boys are still taught that you don't cry, that you don't show your feelings, to man up. I hate that expression, man up. My red flags would be so far up if you said, yeah, I got out of an 8-year relationship. Yeah, I'm glad it's over.
Yeah.
That's a what? What kind of a narcissist a-hole is this?
Right, yeah.
Or what an unevolved human being. It's devastating. Life has these huge highs and these huge lows, and then the in-between where we have to find beauty and hope and love, even in those little moments where nothing is happening. Because that is life. That's people say, oh, I'm so bored during COVID. That's your choice. You could learn a language, learn how to play guitar, go clean your garage. Yeah. Go give away clothes to somebody. Go, make packages, bake for some, send, I don't know, do something, volunteer.
That's right. Awesome. So I have a feeling that you and I could talk for a long time.
Yes.
Maybe we'll do that. We could do another episode sometime. But I want to give you some time to talk about journeys, about your book, and tell people a little bit about that.
When I started my advocacy back in probably 2010, I decided that I better write a book about my experiences on TSM. So I wrote my first book, Babylon Confidential. I then decided that not enough people read the book, so I better make a movie. So I engaged my science fiction fans, and we raised enough money for me to make a documentary called One Little Pill. And One Little Pill is really made for loved ones of people who are suffering and who are interested in TSM. It explains the science behind it. We went all the way from to India, to England, all over America. We interviewed people that have been on TSM, people who use it in other countries. And that is available on Amazon Prime if you're a member. It's, I think, going to be back up on Tubi soon, or people can just go to onelittlepillmovie.com and rent it for $3.99, which goes back to my nonprofit. So in 2013, I launched the C3 Foundation. And C3 Foundation is sort of the global website where people can go to learn about the Sinclair Method and find a provider who will support them, whether it's telemedicine or in office. They can also send their doctors to the medical professionals site, which is c3foundation.net instead of .org. So .net is for doctors, .org is for people, loved ones, whatever. We have all sorts of free resources, plus we have things you can buy, like medication, pill keychain holders, books, films, so we have sort of resources on the site, but most importantly, you can find out all the information. You can see you can read the medical papers, the research papers on TSM, whatever you need to do. It's kind of like a one-stop shopping if you're interested in decreasing or stopping drinking alcohol and you want to use TSM. I launched a coaching page called yoursinclairmethod.com, where I have currently, I think there's 4 of us on the site, and I'm adding 2 coaches from the United Kingdom, so that they'll be in that time zone. And I'm looking to add more coaches that speak other languages as well, especially Spanish. I'm currently a coach on there as well. So people can book a coaching session. And then my other resources, my TED Talk has had about almost 3 million views. And that's a really good starting point for people if they want to say, hey, I know you're struggling with your drinking. Why don't you watch this TED Talk this actress did, and look at what helped her. So a lot of people, that's because it's little bites, 15-minute TED Talk. My documentary's under an hour long because a lot of people won't pick up a book. My website, you go to the landing page, boom, the TED Talk's there. You can get really fast bites of information. And I want to make it as easy as possible for people to learn about TSM. So my new book, Journeys, that I just came out with this year, that took about 6 or 7 years of compiling stories from people who have been on the Sinclair Method. And these aren't all happy stories. These are stories of non-compliance, story of compliance, stories of people who had really bad side effects, people who got over side effects, people who had no side effects. People, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's people who've been on it for a few months and people who've been on it almost as long as I was on it. So I think the book I just think I love people stories, and I always relate to other people's journeys in recovery. So I wanted to put together an entire book of people who've had all different experiences on TSM, so that if anyone was going through anything questionable on the method, they could turn to that book and go, oh, this gal had the same thing I had, the same thoughts, or this guy didn't comply in year 3. And wow, look what happened to him. I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? So I wanted it to be a really good learning experience for people, but also to show that this is not a passing fancy. There are people like me who've been on this for over a decade. I mean, there are people, they've been using it in Finland since the 90s. When naltrexone was first approved in 1994 by the FDA, I mean, this was already, people in Europe are using nalmefene for decades to treat alcoholism. So this isn't some sort of newfangled fad thing. This is something right now, the entire United States is covered by doctors who will support you doing the Sinclair Method. So this is not a thing that some actress is thinking of, and like, wow, I'm in bed with the naltrexone company. First of all, naltrexone is generic. Okay. Second of all, you should ask your own doctor to give you a prescription, and you should demand it because it's FDA approved exactly for this alcohol use disorder. And if they give you a hard time, you should threaten them. Seriously, it is malpractice not to give somebody a life-saving medication. This is an opiate blocker. You cannot misuse it. No one's become addicted to naltrexone. Nobody's ever overdosed from naltrexone. You can't hurt yourself on naltrexone. It doesn't give you a buzz. Naltrexone is an opiate blocker. So if a doctor says to you, I'm not going to give you an opiate, as my GP said to me, you have to say to them, are you the dumbest doctor in the world? Do you even know that naltrexone is used for a myriad of things? It's used for MS. It's used in Crohn's disease, AIDS, cancers. It's used for sleep issues. It's used for pain issues in low dose. So, doctors need to educate themselves a little bit better as well. And that's where my nonprofit comes into play, C3 Foundation. So if any of you out there have any questions about TSM, I strongly urge you to visit c3foundation.org. I urge you to Google Claudia Christian alcohol and everything will come up. And watch my TED Talk and maybe my film would be great if you want to show your loved ones. This is not an excuse to drink alcohol. This is a science-based method to decrease or stop drinking.
Such a great informative time together today. I really enjoy it. I'm really grateful that you took the time to come. And I want to do it again sometime.
I really appreciate it. And, if we can reach one person, then all of this is worth it. If I can save somebody from losing a decade of their life like I did, a decade of their life, then my life is worth it to give back. No shame, no stigma.
That's right. No shame. I love it. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Funky Brain podcast today. I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye for now. So you can't think your way into a new way of acting. You have to act your way into a new way of thinking and being. Hi, I'm Dennis Berry, best-selling author, speaker, and life coach for addiction recovery. So many people are stuck in their addiction, whether it's like drugs or alcohol or food or shopping or sex or money, and they think they could just stop or try to figure it out on their own, but they don't change anything in their lives. Nothing changes if nothing changes. In order for change to happen, you have to change something. My clients will be like, oh, I'll stop tomorrow, or if this happens, then I stop, or someday I'll just give it up. And then they just sit around and think, and hope for different or better results, but it doesn't happen. You have to take action. Action most people aren't willing to take. People don't become willing until they're in enough pain, me included. And unfortunately, they wait and they wait. And time passes by. Even if you are willing, you don't even know where to begin. And that's where I come in. In my best-selling book, Funky Wisdom, A Practical Guide to Life, I talk about the how approach. How do I get sober? How do I stop doing drugs? How do I become healthier? How do I have more successful relationships? How do I become more financially successful? And the answer is how. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. I have to honestly admit that there's a problem. I have to honestly admit that things aren't going well and there needs to be changes. And then once I do that, the door opens and I become open to seeing new ways of living. And then I become willing to make those changes. You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. That's why I'm here to help. And, you know, I've been working with clients for over 15 years and helping them get clean and sober and change their lives and achieve inner peace and success. If you or somebody you love is struggling and doesn't know where to begin and how to make those changes to get to where they need to be, give me a call. Not tomorrow or in a week from now when you're hungover and your life is falling apart. Calm down. Start making that change today and you'll be glad that you did. I'm sending you love and good vibes. Have a great day today.